support or infuse human rights into their journalism. So we have been running this project for the last about 4 years now in Kenya. And one of the things that we have done, or what we've discovered over the time that we've been running this project, is that women's representation in the media is quite flawed. And I'm really honored that today I get the pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, which addresses the critical issues of women's representation in the media. So through our work with women, like I said at the beginning, we've noticed that every time the media is addressing issues of national importance, we don't have women voices. They're very much lacking. That the expertise that is sought most of the time tends to lean towards men. And even when women are experts in some of these subjects, it's very rare that the media will, look for them to be subject experts during interviews. Also, the other thing that is missing is that even when asking for opinions about how a particular issue affects the society, women are the last to be asked, unless it's an issue that is touching on gender-based violence or touching on an issue that is women-centered. A lot of times we get to see that happening. And what we've done over the years is that we've aimed to build the capacity of journalists for them to be able to spot these issues and to be able to include the voices of women. And last year, or rather at the beginning of this year, a study was conducted by the Aga Khan University's Graduate School of Media and Communications, and it revealed a significant gap in media's coverage of women across East Africa, particularly in politics, economics, and entrepreneurship. And alarmingly, women are often absent from headline stories, which, as I shared, is something that we have also noticed. And when they're featured, they're frequently portrayed in limiting roles. Our work at JHR has long focused on profiling women and building their capacity to leverage the media for positive publicity. And it is through this work and through our various training programs and workshops that we have equipped journalists with the skills needed to challenge the unfair representation and to seek out diverse voices. Again, it is through this, our interaction with the women and journalists that we've been able to notice that there is a gap in terms of the number of women that are known to be experts in particular subjects. And in response to this challenge, we partnered with AWIP, that is the Association of Women in Media, to launch a platform that we are calling SOSHA, which is an online directory that is designed to connect journalists with women experts across various fields. And this platform aims to amplify women's voices in media coverage and to promote inclusivity while catalyzing narrative change. And so far, SOSHA has registered over 200 women experts and an equal number of journalists who have utilized the platform to create gender-balanced stories. You will get to hear more about the platform when our colleague Joy from our group will talk about it and present a little bit more about how you can be able to utilize the platform and how to access it. So today's webinar, we have co-hosted this between JHR and the Africa Women in Media, that is AWIM, and we bring together media professionals, women experts from across different parts of this country. When I look at some of our participants, I can see representation from East Africa, North Africa, Central and Southern Africa. So clearly, I believe it is quite befitting for me to say that this is a Pan-Africa webinar that is looking at connecting women and women experts and journalists, and to share insights about how you can be able to utilize SOSHA. Our goal today is to increase awareness of the vital resource that is SOSHA, and to encourage more signups from both journalists and women professionals, and to provide navigation tips for effective use. But at the same time, we are also looking to hear from you as women and as journalists, what your experience has been in using the media, how it's been in being profiled by the media, or the challenges or successes that success stories that you can share with us in terms of being able to utilize the media to sell yourselves as women professionals. So without much further ado, let me appreciate your participation in this important dialogue. as we work together to bridge the gender gap in media representation and ensure that women's contributions are recognized and celebrated. Thank you for joining us today, and I welcome you to this very wonderful convening.
Thank you very much, Winnie, for that. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, from wherever you're joining us from, and thank you for joining us today. The story of SOSHA began in 2021 with a simple but powerful idea. We wanted to create a spreadsheet that would help journalists connect with women experts. However, as we discussed further as a team, we realized that the issue was much larger than we initially thought. Research revealed a glaring statistics. Only 20% of expert voices in the media were women. And this is by the last Global Media Monitoring Project report. Now, this means that for every 10 expert opinion in the news story, only 2 were women. And this was a problem we couldn't ignore at African Women in Media. And so the journey to develop SOSHA began. We wanted to create something more than just a list. We envisioned an interactive platform that would make it easier for journalists to find and connect with women experts while ensuring that safety and privacy were key considerations. Today, I am proud to say that SOSHA has grown beyond our initial vision. We now have over 200 women experts profiles signed on the platform and an equal number of journalists using it to produce more gender-balanced stories. What's more remarkable is our community of SOSHA champions, journalists and editors who have committed to increasing the visibility of women in media. None of this would have been possible without the tireless effort of our team, from our developers to our project lead, the co-founder and CEO of AWIM, Dele Ogunleye. And of course, our partners over the years. I'm especially grateful to Journalists for Human Rights, JHR, whose support has been invaluable in the past year. And we are excited about the future of SOSHA and the impact it will continue to have on bridging the gap in media representation. So thank you once again for being here today. And we hope that we continue to learn, to grow, and build the media of our dreams. So join me as I welcome our moderator for today, the co-founder and CEO of African Women in Media, Dr. Yemisi Akimbobola. Please give her a virtual hand of applause as she takes over. Welcome, Doc.
All right. Thank you so much, Joy. And thank you to our partners at JHR for their opening remarks. And thank you to all of you for being here. A very warm welcome to you all. And thank you for joining us for this important conversation. And Joy has done a fantastic job at outlining why it's important that we're having this conversation. I am Dr. Yemisi Akimbobola, the co-founder and CEO of African Women in Media, and I'll be your moderator for this conversation with our 4 guests. Now, before I introduce them, I'd like to outline the format for today. I will start with a brief introduction of each guest and then proceed to ask each of them a couple of questions, okay? And whilst we do this, I do encourage you, our listeners, to share your reflections and any questions you might have in the Q&A function. We've all been using Zoom for a number of years now, so I'm sure we're familiar with how to find that. And when you write your question, please indicate whether you'd like to ask it verbally or if you'd prefer that I read it out. And we can only select a number of questions based on the time that we have at the end, okay? So we'll ask you to keep your remarks as focused on the brief question as possible. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of 2 of AWIM's board members who are here with us today. That's Gil Jami and Nuza Ben Muhammad. And Joy is going to share a link in the chat to the bios of all of our board members, so you can have a look at their bio. So let's get our conversation started. With me today are 4 distinguished guests: Harriet Atiang, who is the founder of Dada Radio; Hesbon Owila, who's a lecturer at Aga Khan University; Dr. Blessing Agbo Tamu, who's a counseling and educational psychologist; and Mrs. and Mrs. Dado Kamara, who's a journalist. Can I please encourage you all to mute your mics so that we do not have any interference in hearing the speakers as we have our conversation? Now, their diverse backgrounds means that we will get a range of perspectives. As Winnie said at the beginning, they come from a range of African countries and different contexts and also different expertise. So we hope that you'll enjoy the insights that they will provide with us today. All right, my first guest today is Harriet Atiang, who, as I mentioned, is the founder of Dada Radio. And Dada Radio is a women-led community radio station in Siaya County, Kenya, that was launched in June 2023. With over 10 years of journalism experience, Harriet has worked as a TV and radio presenter at the Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, a station manager at Amani FM and Ref FM, and administrator at the Association of Kenya Community Media Operators. She's passionate about gender equality in media and advocates for amplifying the voices of rural women and girls, focusing on issues like economic empowerment, women's leadership, and combating sexual and gender-based violence. Her work has been featured in a number of media organizations, including the Daily Nation. So thank you for joining us today, Harriet. I have a couple of questions to you, so I'll ask them one after the other. The first is, in your experience as a journalist, what has been the most significant barrier to accessing women experts for your stories?
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to my colleagues from Kenya. Thank you so much, Dr. for this opportunity. Of course, I'm so humbled. And on to your first question, the challenges that you experience while accessing women. First of all is the underrepresentation of women in various sectors. When we look at sectors, for instance, like STEM, you find that women are quote unquote overly underrepresented. So you find that when you want to talk about a particular topic, especially relating to STEM, you'll have to really take a lot of time looking for the relevant sources that you can interview or that you can talk to, or the right person to give you that kind of information. And then another challenge is lack of visibility. You find that women are really, with my experience actually as a journalist, passionately working with the communities, there is one thing I've come to realize, that there is a lot of good work being done by women at the grassroots level. But you find that most of the media, let me say legacy media, they don't really focus from the grassroots level. They focus maybe from the national level, or in our case in this country, maybe from the county level and above. So you realize that so many women are doing so many good things, but since they have not been highlighted by the media that is supposed to highlight that, you find that it becomes a challenge for us to be able to, recognize these women. So for us as a community radio, again working in the community, it has been our actually we are challenging ourselves to now bring it on from the grassroots level, from the lowest level, so that, we can also be a bridge between them and maybe the mainstream media and also the other parts of the world. So it has actually been a real challenge. And then another challenge is time constraints, where you find we've had to cancel or reschedule our interviews with women on various occasions. One of the reasons being, women are actually multitaskers. It's the same person taking care of the family, the same person going to the farm, the same person doing this and that at the same time. And you find that you also need them to maybe come for an interview, or you have set an appointment with them. You realize that by the time you're going, especially talking about the rural setup in which we are operating, by the time you go for the interview, you find that either they are not ready or something else has come up that needs the attention. It means you'll have to cancel that interview at that particular day. And maybe if it's a program that you have already mentioned to the audience that on such a day we are going to have such a program, we'll be talking to so and so, you realize that you will have again to go and maybe apologize to the audience and reschedule the interview, and or sometimes there are those who even don't find time completely to do the interviews or to give us to share their stories. So those are just but some of the challenges. And then another one that is so common in all the areas that I have worked in. Of course, I've worked in most of the areas. I don't know whether it's by nature. Most of the areas I've worked in are the areas that really consider women as objects. So there's still that culture where you find that women are supposed to be seen and not to be heard. And I've experienced that a lot, starting from the first station where I was working about 10 years ago. Just as you mentioned, at UBC, it was, Uganda is a country where naturally men dominate, men are more dominant, and, women are supposed to. Actually, women kneel. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing that women kneel when serving men or when talking to them and all that. But unfortunately, I realized as at a personal level that the same thing replicates even at workplaces, where you find women are given the last priority in terms of, maybe for instance, you're being assigned to go out for a certain story, and there are few resources, maybe few cameras on or few sound recorders. You realize that priority is given to the male reporters first, or probably they have gone before you and all the cameras are gone, so it means you may have to hold on with your story. And that has a lot to do with the cultural part of it. It's normal in some places that women have to come last. And again, I've come to face that challenge again and again in the other stations that I worked as well, where you find women are okay. I think they have been so used or so accustomed to this culture to such an extent that they are used to it. So when you approach them, they're also like, okay, are we even supposed to talk? Are we supposed to talk? So again, encouraging the women, by the time you start working on that mentality, it takes some time. So women have been accustomed by culture that they are not supposed to talk. Yeah. So those are just but a few of the challenges in a nutshell that I have experienced in my journey as a journalist and as a gender enthusiast. Thank you so much. Back to you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Harriet. I think you've spoken on a wide range of issues, from cultural weaponizing of some cultural elements and how that shapes the extent to which women feel able to speak. The agency of being able to speak is also very critical for sources, especially when we think about the positioning of women in the society. But nevertheless, there is a challenge for us as media to still ensure that we are adequately representing women's voice, both as sources in content, but also as producers of media content. So I'd love to hear your opinion, Harriet, on what you think of tools like SourceHer. Can journalists overcome some of these challenges to improve gender balance in media coverage with platforms like SourceHer?
Yes, when we talk about challenges like underrepresentation, when we have such a platform, it means that at least many women will be able to register in this platform, which means even for us as journalists, when we want women to interview, we will not have or will not take a lot of time looking for these sources. We simply have one-stop shop where, with a lot of ease, we access these women and we are able to interview them or use them as our sources at the time we need them. And then we also find that this platform will increase the visibility of women. For instance, this opportunity that I got to be one of the speakers in this was due to this platform. So it means that if I had not signed up, most probably I wouldn't be here. So I think it's already working, and it's a work in progress. Women will be more visible And then it will also form a community of women of particular, careers or particular sectors, where if I need this, maybe I'm experiencing challenges, for instance, in media management as a woman. I can easily go there and look for a woman who is also in the same sector as myself, and maybe connect with them and find share some ideas, share some experiences, and in that case we'll build a community where women build each other along the way, and at the end of it all, we will all get to a point of having a woman more inspired.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much, Harriet. I think it's really important what you mentioned there about the fact that we actually, you're one of those who are registered on Sourcer as an expert yourself, and hence why you're here with us today. And to our listeners, I'd love to encourage you to make use of that Q&A section. If anything that Harriet has said so far has ignited some thoughts, reflections that you'd like to share, please do use it. And I believe also for our French-speaking audience, we do have French translation through the caption button at the bottom there. You just got to select the language you're listening to. And then we also have an audio translation as well. Okay. All right. So our next guest is Dr. Blessing Ntamu, who is a bilingual, so she speaks French and English, counseling and educational psychologist with over 20 years of experience in the education sector. She is the head of external relations, a lecturer and researcher at the University of Calabar in Nigeria, with a focus on behavior modification, developmental psychology, gender equality, and mental health. And she has published over 30 articles, 3 books, aligning her work with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 4, 5, and 10. Dr. Ntamo holds a PhD in educational psychology and a master's in counseling psychology, along with over 40 other certificates in clinical psychology. She specializes in helping individuals manage mental health challenges through CBT, mindfulness, neuroscience-based interventions. And as a trauma-responsive psychotherapist, she has supported over 100 survivors of gender-based violence through her work at the Gender-Based Violence Center in Calabar. She's a certified CPD trainer, working with organizations like UNFPA and the Gender and Development Action, and has provided psychosocial support and training to law enforcement and civil society groups. She has played a key role in developing standard operating procedures on gender-based violence and the gender strategic planning for Cross River states in Nigeria, and developed a holistic resilience course for journalists for us here at AWIM, and contributed to several major initiatives on gender and development. So no doubt with that bio, she's well qualified to speak to the area we're going to be questioning her on. And great to have you with us, Dr. Blessing. Again, I've got a couple of questions for you. How do you think better representation of women experts in media can impact mental health awareness and discourses, especially around some of the areas of expertise that you have and in the African context?
Thank you very much, Dr. Yemisi, for that elaborate introduction, and then for the opportunity to speak on this panel. Yeah, the whole issue around around mental health, pardon me, I'm so passionate about gender-based violence, now is grounded in a lack of awareness from what is mental health or mental illness to the stigma surrounding mental health issues, particularly in Africa, to the causes of mental health challenges, and then there are also some cultural and stereotypical issues that magnify mental health issues. And then for women to get the correct perspective on these issues, they have to see women talking about these things, So when we have women more represented, more representation of women in the media, and then women will handle these issues, and then the women listening can get the right perspective. For instance, we have a lot of discrimination in our society, every aspect of our society, and it's something that women have come to see.
Sorry, Dr. Blessed.
Bintao
Samaki, could you please mute your mic? Thank you very much. And could we have the admin team, also the technical team, just make sure mics are muted and that our speakers are spotlighted as well? Thank you. My apologies, Dr. Blessing. Please continue.
All right, thank you very much. So we need to help women understand that mental health challenges, first of all, there's a difference between mental health challenges and being mentally healthy and then being mentally ill. Maybe I have to do a little bit of talk about that. So mental health is actually a state of both your physical health, you being in a good state emotionally, socially, you having a high level of self-awareness, you being able to initiate relationships and then build them, you being able as an individual to contribute meaningfully to society and maximize your potential. So for you to seek help of a mental health expert does not mean that you're mentally ill. That's another dimension of it. So we have to normalize the fact that, okay, I could have mental health challenges and I could seek help and there's nothing wrong with that. I may not be okay and it's okay to seek an expert to be okay. And the only way women can get to learn about this and get to, maximize the opportunities around them is when they hear women who are informed, women who hold the right perspective, speak about these things, and they're usually not available. While there's more, this discourse around right now in Africa, if it is the men telling the stories, they'll still look at it as a masculine thing, as a men thing, as opposed to it being like women, like the previous speaker said, we are the burden bearers. We believe that we should come last to prioritize every other person's health, every other person's issues before yours. And then we continue to break down and then to, skydive in our mental health issues. So we need to see women out there who are letting us know that it's okay. So you cannot help your household, for instance, if you're not okay. So it's okay to prioritize your health. It's okay to seek help when you need help. What really is mental health? Is it if I seek an expert help, does it mean I am mentally ill? I am crazy, literally. We need to hear women talking about these issues. So until women tell our own stories, we're not going to get the right perspective being told. When men are telling our stories, they're telling it from a masculine perspective, and then it's twisted. We're not getting, so we just need women out there, and then we won't need the discussion to continue to continue to try to let the discussion be out there constantly so that women can get the right information they need about mental health, about stigmatization, about how to maintain balance, work-life balance. We have been sold this story of women multitask. Multitasking is a great mental health destroyer, if you might say. We need women to say these things to women, to have these discussions, from a female perspective so that other women can understand, know what they're doing wrong, know what is right, know what is destroying them, and all of that. And until women tell these stories, there's no headway, actually.
Thank you. I mean, I can hear the passion in your voice, Dr. Blessing, around this topic. And you also mentioned earlier on that you have a passion around violence against women and girls. Binto Samake, could you please mute your mic? Colleagues, could you please make sure that our guests' mics are muted?
La traduction ne marche pas. Est-ce qu'on peut traduire?
Can we have our technical team either mute Binto Samake's mic or...
I speak French, I don't speak English.
Dr. Blessing, my apologies for that. So you also mentioned at the beginning that you have a passion for violence against women and girls. And perhaps you could answer the same question, but from that perspective as well.
Yeah, the issue of gender-based violence is also one that's shrouded in stigma.
Sorry, please. The tradition.
So there's so much stigmatization about gender-based violence issues. I mean, there's re-victimization of the victim. So you're the victim of gender-based violence, and then both from your household to your church, wherever you go, you're being victimized. You should have stayed. You should have endured. This is what all women go through. You shouldn't complain. You are a victim of rape, and then you are isolated. Your friends don't want to speak to you anymore. And all of this. We need to let the entire world this time, not just the women, know that this is wrong. We need to help them understand the discourse around gender-based violence, how to prevent it, how to respond, and then they should understand the issue of survivorship, victimization, and then we need to ensure, that we have the right policies in place, right laws in place. We need to ensure that not just having these laws written down, that they are also being implemented. We need to ensure that there's support for women, and then we need to normalize women going to seek support. Sometimes there's support, there's no awareness. Who's going to tell the women there's support out there for them when they encounter or they're victims or survivors of gender-based violence. It has to be women like them. Generally, women warm up to women in things like this. And then there's another aspect of women also being the ones victimizing women, being the ones stigmatizing women. So until we have women who are qualified, women who are aware, women who are role models that all women can look up to, sitting down and having this discussion in public places, many people would not, this stigmatization would continue. For instance, in a court in Cross River State, in the magistrate court, a woman has to cover her head to enter the court. A woman has to wear trousers to enter the court. And there's no laws for the men. So you have a case of gender-based violence. A man has discriminated against you, has abused you physically, sexually, and all that. And you are in court. And you have to go there dressed in a certain way, looking a certain way. And he walks in with his shoulders high. So you're already put at a disadvantage. So we need to have women come together, create this force to protest issues like this. Now, you talked about source hair. I mean, source hair can become a tool that will be, hydra-headed that can actually address a lot of concerns. So we can begin to come together, bring our forces together, and then jointly address women issues from this platform source hair. So I would say if you have more webinars bringing everyone on the platform together, more opportunities for interaction and networking, then we can begin to see how we can jointly address women issues like gender-based violence, issues like discrimination in society, sexual harassment, and whatever other issues we have for representation in leadership positions, mentoring of the younger women. Some women do not have women to look up to. People have aspirations, young women have aspirations, but there's no one to look up to. When you have women in the media, women fully represent leaders, experts in media, those can become role models for women.
Okay, I think we might have lost Dr. Blessing there. The fun of using Zoom for this conversation. Dr. Blessing, are you still with us?
People they can look. Hello, so I think there was a little disruption from the network. Yeah, so really need this. We really need women to come out. We really need women to be properly represented. Representation is low, according to GMMP in 2021, in the global north, you have just about 37% of women being utilized as sources, in the media. And that's the global north. So it's much lower, as we know, in the global south. So we have to do all we can to increase this representation, to stop the stereotyping of women. Mostly women are looked onto, even when women are represented in the media, it's more like, oh, it's fashion stories, it's not stories related to politics, to power, to economics. When those stories they need experts for such stories, they go to the male folks, and that's discrimination. We have women who are doing really well in these fields. We just need to bring them to the limelight. So I think that this is a good platform, and then there's so much more that can be done to achieve our goal.
And I mean, you've begun to answer my second question, really, which was about the challenges that you've observed in terms of media coverage of issues like mental health, gender-based violence, etc. Because I guess the central thesis of what we're discussing is that representation matters and that the media plays a role in some of these cultural norms that we've discussing also. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that question, and how we can have women experts be a key part of addressing these media representation and challenges?
So we have challenges, like you said, we mentioned most of them, the gender bias. So you're applying the same role, you have the same level of expertise, but you're offered, lower pay. We have work environment and for women. Woman, she plays multiple roles, and then she needs to maintain a work balance. She's a caregiver in the home. So we need an environment, for instance, that has like nursery or a daycare where a woman can get a baby and go to work, so she can progress her career. She does not need to stop working for 2 years before she grows and she can continue. These things keep women actually. So we have this kind of challenges. We have when you talk about the media, how many we own like little senior, I'm sure she's one of the few in Africa. We need to encourage women to aspire to ownership and leadership positions, mentor and support them to get to these positions. That's some of the challenges we are facing. Then there's harassment, like she has said. The woman needs to be seen and not heard. So when you come out, a man is being assertive, the man is being assertive. But as a woman, you try to assert yourself and speak for yourself, they say you talk too much. So there's this discrimination, there's online harassment of women, and then this makes women to shudder from being as visible as they should be. There's sexual harassment. Even as a journalist, you want to progress in your job, or any other expert, you face this harassment, and then you manage to get to the top after having toiled through it, and people still look at you with a question mark. They don't know how you got there. So these are some of the challenges women face in coming out, to assert themselves and coming out, to be the sources. There's time challenges and all of this. And then we need more policies protecting women, so that when you go out there, you're harassed, you can actually seek legal, you can seek the support of the law to defend and protect yourself. So there are all these challenges, and they need to be met for us to achieve that representation of women as we need to, But I think that mentorship will go a long way. Mentorship and building strong women communities that support each other, help each other through, it will help us to go a long way, really.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Blessing, for your contributions. Really impassionate responses there to questions around mental health representation, but then also around things like gender-based violence and other forms of, gender norms that can be weaponized. And we have quite a number of questions in the Q&A already coming up from both your presentation as well as Harriet's as well, which we'll get to at the end. And just a quick reminder also to our French-speaking colleagues that we do have translation. Now, our next guest is a French speaker. She will be speaking in French. I'll be asking them questions in French. And so for our colleagues who are English speaking, please do also use the caption function, where you can and if you open it up, it will give you the option for translation. So please tick that button so that it's blue, and then that way you will be able to hear our next guests in English. Okay, and I believe we do also have somebody who's doing verbal translation as well. So our next speaker is Mrs. Dado Kamara, who joins us from Mali. She's a journalist with over 10 years of experience, publishing director of the weekly L'Annonceur, which is a newspaper that runs with 100% of female journalists in Mali. She's a member of the leading committee of La Maison de la Presse de Mali, which is the umbrella organization of professional media associations in Mali. She's also president of the Female Association of Newspaper Professionals of Mali, APEM. Bonjour, Madame Kamara.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Pouvez-vous partager certaines de vos expériences de travail au Mali ou associer à des experts femmes féminines pour être un défi? Comment avez-vous surmonté ces obstacles?
Je vous remercie. Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis heureuse de participer à ces webinaires pour partager nos expériences sur la thématique femmes dans les médias au Mali, mais précisément dans un contexte de crise et de terrorisme. Avant de répondre à votre question, je voudrais d'abord donner un aperçu sur la situation démographique et socio-démographique du Mali. Voilà. Le Mali est un pays francophone de l'Afrique de l'Ouest et il est très vaste avec une superficie de 1,2 km². Il compte plus de 22 millions d'habitants, dont 49,7% sont des femmes, selon les derniers recensements de la population. Le contexte actuel de crise au Mali, c'est suite à un coup d'État militaire en 2020. Et le Mali est dans une transition politique institutionnelle marquée par la lutte contre l'insécurité et le terrorisme qui affecte toute la région. Voilà. Le pays est encore en état de catastrophe naturelle suite à des multiples inondations. Voilà. Et maintenant, Avant d'entrer dans le vif du sujet, j'aimerais vous dire aussi que ce contexte a sérieusement affecté la situation des droits humains et la cohésion sociale, la paix et l'accès de la population aux services sociaux de base. Et plus particulièrement, ça a aggravé la vulnérabilité des femmes et des filles. On a plus de 15 000 cas de violence basés sur le genre qui sont enregistrés par les autorités aussi. Alors, par ailleurs, on note aussi des avancées non négligeables sur les droits des femmes et l'égalité du genre au Mali. Il y a la nouvelle loi électorale qu'il faut noter. Il y a la nouvelle loi électorale qui donne des avancées non négligeables sur les droits des femmes et l'égalité du genre. Voilà. Il y a le dialogue intermalien qui s'est passé en mai dernier aussi, qui a demandé l'application stricte de cette nouvelle loi qui favorise la promotion du genre dans les fonctions électives et nominatives. Voilà. Bon, parlant de la représentativité des femmes, il faut savoir et comprendre qu'il n'y a pas de statistiques réelles à ce jour concernant le nombre de femmes qui travaillent dans l'information et le média au Mali. Longtemps considéré comme un métier d'homme, les femmes ont commencé à s'intéresser au journalisme avec la création des écoles privées. C'était dans les années 2000. Donc, naturellement, il y a très peu de femmes au niveau des rédactions des presses et elles sont pour la plupart des animatrices et dans les organes audiovisuels et les radios. Les femmes journalistes généralement se voient confier des rubriques classiques telles que l'éducation, la santé, les faits de société et le droit, la politique, la diplomatie, l'économie, la sécurité, les sciences sont des rubriques qui sont réservées aux hommes journalistes. Ça, c'est un problème qui affecte généralement les femmes. Donc, pour cela, cette situation de non-représentativité des femmes qui travaillent dans les médias a un impact sur la promotion du genre dans les contenus médiatiques au Mali. De mes constats des journalistes, de mes expériences professionnelles, je constate qu'on donne plus la parole aux hommes qu'aux femmes et filles dans les médias. L'expertise féminine est moins représentée dans les contenus de presse. Et on a l'impression qu'il y a plus d'hommes d'experts pour s'exprimer, pour s'affirmer, partager les nouvelles dans la société et pour faire connaître leur savoir-faire. Et les questions sécuritaires, les questions diplomatiques et la géostratégie, etc. Donc, ce sont les hommes qui ont la voix. Chaque fois, on leur donne la parole. Parce que les raisons qui favorisent cette faiblesse d'inclusion de la voix des femmes dans les médias portent surtout sur le fait que les femmes ne sont pas très souvent disponibles pour parler dans les médias. Ça, c'est un problème. Certains hommes journalistes évoquent aussi un manque de confiance chez le peu de femmes qui leur parlent dans le cadre de leur travail d'information. Donc ça, c'est l'une des causes principales de la non-inclusion des voix des femmes. Aussi, on remarque que certaines femmes ne parlent pas dans les médias parce qu'elles n'ont pas reçu l'autorisation. Voilà, l'autorisation, parce qu'elles n'ont pas reçu l'autorisation de leur mari, de leurs parents, voilà, pour s'exprimer. Des fois, c'est par peur de menaces, surtout dans les localités rurales qui sont touchées par les conflits armés. Voilà. Bon, généralement, les femmes font la une des organes, malheureusement, quand elles sont victimes en période de catastrophe, d'attaques meurtrières, des violences basées sur le genre, des pesanteurs sociaux occupent une place très importante dans cette représentativité négative des femmes dans les médias. Ces facteurs limitent aussi les femmes et ses multiples contributions au second plan. Voilà. Il y a aussi le manque de modules d'enseignement sur le journalisme sensible au genre et l'insuffisance de formation des journalistes professionnels sur le genre et les droits des femmes qui freinent la promotion du genre dans les médias. Mais au Mali, ça commence à venir un peu parce qu'avec le projet JDH, je suis la formatrice et je fais le mentorat des journalistes. On voit avec le projet JDH, les journalistes commencent à s'intéresser vraiment à ces sujets, à la représentativité des femmes et à l'amplification des voix des femmes dans les médias. Voilà. Il y a aussi un autre phénomène qui existe et dévalorise la femme et son statut dans les médias. C'est le contenu publicitaire d'acteurs commerciaux avec des messages sexistes. Donc ça aussi, c'est un phénomène qui dévalorise la femme. Voilà. Maintenant, qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire pour améliorer la situation? On se pose la question. Donc, il faut financer des études, financer peut-être une étude nationale sur les femmes dans les médias, afin de disposer des statistiques qui va vraiment aider les journalistes à s'intéresser aux questions des femmes, qui va fournir des connaissances aux acteurs aussi de l'information, aux décideurs, même aux partenaires techniques et financiers. Bon, j'imagine aussi qu'on doit multiplier les activités de formation et de remise à niveau des journalistes, mais surtout du personnel d'appui aux rédactions de presse sur le journalisme à l'information sensible au genre. Voilà.
Okay.
Donc, oui, on doit aussi outiller les journalistes et les mettre en relation avec des réseaux de
We seem to have lost Mrs. Kamara there for a moment. Mrs. Kamara, can you hear us? Okay. I think at this point, I'll just do a quick summary of what she has contributed.
Oui.
Okay. D'accord. We couldn't hear you before. Please go ahead.
Allô?
Hello.
Oui, on me reçoit.
Oui, so merci beaucoup, Madame Kamara. Selon vous, quelles sont les mesures clés que les médias pouvons prendre pour amplifier la voix des femmes en milieu urbain et rural et femmes au conflit dans Mali?
Oui, il faut d'abord outiller les journalistes et les mettre en relation avec les réseaux des experts femmes engagés pour amplifier les voix. Parce que ce n'est pas tout le monde qui accepte de parler, toutes les femmes qui acceptent de parler. Donc, il faut d'abord outiller les journalistes et les mettre en relation avec celles qui sont déjà dans ces milieux et les mettre en confiance. Voilà. Il faut aussi renforcer la capacité de ces femmes expertes de la société civile et des collectivités sur le genre et la prise de parole dans les médias. Voilà.
Okay, très bien. Merci beaucoup. And colleagues, again, if you have questions based on what Madam Kamara has shared with us, please to share that in the Q&A. And I think there's some key points here. One, in terms of conflict settings, which she described some of the environments in Mali, for example, and the significance and importance of making sure that we are airing the voices and stories of women who are in these conflict settings, not just both in terms of how it's impacting them, but then also their role in peace building and how they are contributing to addressing peace building in those locations. And she also mentioned there the biases around immigration status and other key kind of social conditions in Mali that is affecting. So thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, Madame Kamara, for your contribution. Okay, so our next speaker is, who's our final speaker today, is Hesbon Owila, who is a lecturer at Aga Khan University's Graduate School of Media and Communications, where he also serves as the research lead. As a PhD candidate, Hesbon's research focuses on political economy of media, political communication, and the role of media and emerging technology in civic engagement and democratization. Hesbon has over 13 years of teaching experience and has led several research projects, including the 2024 report on the state of women in media representation, coverage, and framing of women in East African media, and has written 2 weekly opinion columns for the People Daily and Capital News in Kenya, addressing technology, socio-economic issues, and politics. Great to have you join us, Hesbon. Is Hesbon in the room?
Yes, I'm in the room. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Yes, I can. Great to have you join us, Hesbon. Thank you very much for your time today. So like with the other speakers, I've got a couple of questions for you. And, you've done a lot of research in these areas, as I've mentioned earlier. So based on your research, based on those findings, would you say are the most pressing gaps in media coverage of women, and how you see platforms like Source.her addressing these gaps?
I think there are a number of what I would say very progressive indicators in the coverage of women from the study that we did in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. So in terms of the number of women who are increasingly covering the heartbeats, there seems to be progress because that has increased. The number of women who are given opinion editorial pages where expert opinion, certain things that are happening in the society, are articulated on these pages seems to have increased in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And of course, there is also very positive progressive framing, especially in Uganda, which I would say are critical areas that we are seeing serious progress. But then in terms of gaps, I think the study that we did also highlights a number of gaps. One is the disproportionate number of women compared to men in leadership position, both at the editorial and the business leadership. So if you look at Kenya, for instance, the number of women who occupy media business leaderships, or the number of media organizations that have women at the helm as business leaders is only 11%. In Uganda and Tanzania, it's fairly, high, let me say, compared to Kenya at 20% each. And it's the same thing. So at business leadership level, the number is even lower, but it's lower also at the editorial level. And that raises a number of concern. What decisions are made, and do those decisions on the stories that go outside there about women, have the gender lens? So that's one area. that there's a gap that probably needs to be addressed. And our study, the study that we did, the state of women in the media in East Africa, we went around the East African region talking to stakeholders from the academy, from the industry, from the civil society, and from the media industry. And what has emerged is that we need to come up with a policy with specific action points for different players in the media industry, and strongly speak to the subsystems of control and the media at the ownership level. The second thing that I would say is concerning, is a big gap that is concerning, is the death of women in the headline stories, especially of newspapers. So we know that newspaper headline stories basically set, is essentially the pulse of what is happening in the society. It's what people give prominent attention to, is what people think is worth paying more attention to and worth attending to. But the indicators from the study show that up to 55% of the days that we covered in Tanzania, in Uganda, and up to 39% of the days that we covered in Uganda had not even a single mention of a woman in the headline story. Not the headline, but the entire headline story. So in Kenya, it's a bit high at 73, but you see, I mean, Uganda and Tanzania seem to be fairly low. And we did this study at a time that was leading to the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And you'd expect that there are so many stories that speak to issues to do with women, yet the findings showed us the contrary. And that was newspapers. For TV, we focused specifically on the last 2 months of the year, including those 16 days. And predominantly, women were missing in the top stories on TV. And where women were covered, women were not covered prominently, unlike in newspapers. So that's another issue, that to what extent are we, covering women enough to set women and women issues at the top of the agenda that the society considers important. Then number 3, which we found quite intriguing and probably needs very urgent attention by different players, and we've tried, involving a lot of stakeholders, is the fact that women are not covered in women events. And then secondly, women are not covered in the most consequential issues, or around the context of the most consequential issues. So if you consider politics, economics, and entrepreneurship, they only constituted 11% of the stories featuring women. And a lot more worrying is the fact that the number of stories that had women in women events was close to less than 3%. So actually less than 3% of the stories. And I think one of the speakers has already talked about that there's a sense in which women are not given coverage, even when what they are doing is significant and of public interest. So unless they are at the national level and they have a national figure grace those events, even if it is a very powerful women-led event, there's a high likelihood that it's not going to be given the coverage that it deserves. And probably some of these things tie with the representation of women in editorial, leadership of different newsrooms. The fourth issue that we found that is fairly significant in terms of paying attention to, or a gap that we identified, is the fact that most of the stories about women have photos. But for the stories that have photos, up to 21% of those stories have photos that don't have women. So the story is talking about women. There is a photo that is accompanying that story in the newspaper, and that photo has nothing to do with women. Of course, we know in terms of giving stories prominence, in terms of looking at stories from a media literate point of view, a story becomes a lot more prominent if it's longer, if it is accompanied by graphics or photos that are relevant. But then there is that disparity where the stories about women but the photos are either men or just graphics that have very little to do with women. So those are the major, gaps that we noticed. But from the findings that we had, when we do a deep analysis of these findings, you realize that one of the key things is that when we talk about the coverage and framing of women, because our study first of all looked at the representation, what are the numbers of women in the media, and we realize that yes, there is some improvement, but there are still more men in the media and more men in leadership and editorial positions in leadership. Then we went to the coverage. To what extent are women featured in the media? And there we found some very glaring gaps in terms of fewer women in the headline stories, in terms of the stories that featuring women only feature women in very specific national events where there are national figures, but women are predominantly missing in the consequential areas. But you also looked at framing, how women framed. And the encouraging bit is that they are framed progressively. So the stories where women are, majority of these stories actually frame them very progressively, with very progressive coverage and framing of women in Uganda. But the key thing we noticed is that even where there are more women writing stories about women, it doesn't translate to positive and progressive framing of women. So when we compared Uganda, that has fewer women, fewer stories about women written by women, and Tanzania, that has more women in the newsrooms, more stories written by women, we realize that it is in Tanzania where the framing of women is stereotypical and frames women in those traditional roles that does not advance, any gender agenda. So it basically entrenches that unconscious frame that we have, that we associate with certain things that women should be doing, and relegating those roles to women and appreciating women in those roles, even where women are doing things that are outside those roles that need to be applauded. Then you compare that to Uganda, and you realize that in as much as most of the stories in Uganda were written by male journalists, the kind of framing, that they gave those stories is fairly progressive. And then secondly, they gave those stories more attention. So in Uganda, where there are fewer male journalists in the newsrooms, you realize that most of the progressive stories about women went beyond the hard news stories. They went to feature stories where they were giving more of why and how. So traditionally, we have stories that just give us the hard news of what happened, who it happened to, where and when. But in Uganda, you realize that the significant stories that they found important to stretch to the why and how and gave them longer coverage were actually predominantly stories about women that covered women in progressive fashion. So what did that tell us within the broader, objective of the project where we conducted this research? Because the project seeks to advance gender and gender equality in the media and civil society. We realize that feminization of newsrooms is not the way to go, that having more women in the newsroom is a good step, but it's not all we need to do. So we made that step to have, equal representation, but then there's a lot about sensitization of both male and female journalists, to sensitize them to start having a look at issues from a gender perspective, and not necessarily the traditional way of saying that, oh, this story is about women, you put a photo of a woman, but a very holistic, perspective of the society and how we can use our gender lenses to advance very progressive framing of women. So that's something that was picked up, and we developed a curriculum and modules. And in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, we're actually conducting We have fellowships, you're conducting trainings, and then we have continuous professional development trainings. And what we are doing is that we're also training trainers of trainers, giving them this information so that they can address some of these gaps. So that's pretty much about the gaps, plus a few progressive indicators that data shows.
No, thank you. And I mean, it shows, first of all, the very important role that data presents, and actually seeing the facts in front of you. And like you said, I mean, several research has demonstrated that having more women in certain roles doesn't necessarily automatically translate to an increased representation or even positive representation. And largely because of some of those fundamental structural issues still exist, right? The lack of certain kind of policies, or even the ways in which media professionals are trained, the trainers, and those kind of things. So long as those things still remain within the kind of existing traditional structures, then having female leaders or more women journalists doesn't necessarily change the environment. But actually, we have a case of conformity where they come in and conform to what already exists, right? So I'm curious, based on all of this data and your engagement with them, how you see roles, the roles platforms like Sourceware play or can play in addressing some of these gaps?
There's a sense in which the academy can only do so much. So us guys in the academy can provide data. But I think, some of the implementation, some of the pushing, the data and what the data means requires different players. And I think that's where you come in. That's where many organizations like AWIM come in to help push that conversation, to help bring on board, more women voices. In places like Uganda and Tanzania, you realize that newspapers don't have as many op-ed pages dedicated to women. So generally the op-ed pages are fewer, then only a few are dedicated to women. So how do we have different organizations that can just say that we have experts, we have women experts in different areas, or we have experts who speak to things in different areas? How do we expand this? Because a lot of times we realize that the industry, different organizations, and the academy kind of operate in isolation.
In silos, yes.
Yeah, in silos. So we have the data, anyone who wants that data. So that concerted effort coming together, getting to understand what is happening. And then, of course, organizations like yours can come in and tell us, now, these are the pain points that a women organization experience. So how can we co-create research that builds on the research that has been done before? For me, I think that's very key, because when we launched this study here in Kenya, the office, so in Kenya, there's an office of the President Advisor on Women Rights, which is a cabinet position office. Because we invited them for the launch, they also came and told us, now, what are the other critical issues in the society? And they opened our eyes in areas that research would contribute. And right now we are working on another study that is looking at sexual and gender-based violence in sports, which has been a big problem in this area. And I think, having organizations that are looking for data, they have a picture of what the pain points are, but they don't have the expertise, or that is not their core area. Partnering and helping have concerted efforts. So they bring the expertise, we bring the data, other organizations come in, speak to the data, explore what other areas. And I think for me, that's the most important thing, that we break the silos, work together, you shape even the research that is done in the academy, you start owning it from addresses the issues that you see every day.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, conversations around gender equality are also particularly helpful for media when we make the business case as well, right? And so my final question for you and for this conversation is, what economic consequences come up as a result of leaving women out of media content and their perspectives?
Well, chipping in. And even when we were having some of the roundtables, it came up that the media right now is struggling to deal with the digital disruption, and revenue is one of the key areas that the digital disruption has disrupted. And I think a lot of focus has gone on revenue and less on content.
Mm.
And what is not explored is that predominantly, there's data that shows that predominantly the content that is directed at women is essentially content that the producers of that content believe women would want to consume. Yet the contrary appears to be the truth. Yeah, that it's not necessarily the content, like targeting women with issues to do with fashion. That's not it. They did not at no point is data showing that women want things to do with culinary skills, fashion, the entertainment scene. So for media to deal with the digital disruption from a revenues point of view, women become a niche that probably they've not tapped on. Because the struggle right now is how do they compensate for the revenues that they're losing from their traditional platforms, because now the circulation is going down, TV is not taking in as much advert as it was, same to radio. So how do they compensate for that on these new platforms that people are increasingly consuming for free, but media houses are increasingly putting paywalls, make people pay.
Mm.
So the opportunity that is there is to understand, because the demographic that want to consume economic, hard stuff, it's only that it has never been understood that in what way do they want to consume that. And I think when media houses focus on that and they understand that this is the psychology of a female consumer, then they are likely to produce content that speaks to a female consumer, so much so that that female consumer will find that content that they can't find anywhere else, and they will pay for that content because that content provides both progress in their lives and is entertaining. So there's a niche there. There's a niche in trying to bridge the loss in the traditional platforms by tapping on the new platforms and targeting this very niche demographic with content that they need, they find interesting, and would progress their lives, and they will be willing to pay for. And I think for you to get content that someone would be willing to pay for, then you need to understand them. And for me, the opportunity there is for media outlets and media's businesses to understand what is it that women consumers want to consume. And once that is understood, how do you give them that exclusively and in a way that gives them very robust content that they can't find anywhere else? And therefore, if you ask them to pay, they'll find a reason to pay for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much for those contributions. And I think the conversation we're starting here, it speaks to some of the themes of our upcoming conference as well, where we'll be talking about media, business and financial models, especially from a gender equality perspective. So thank you for sharing that insight and the data you've collected through your research. And thanks to all of our speakers for their insights today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Now, while I go to the Q&A section to look at the many questions that has been coming up in the last few minutes, I'd like to invite one of our board members, Nuzar Ben Mohammed, to share some insights with us from Tunisia. Now, aside from Nuzar being a board member at AWIM, she's also a journalist and the regional project manager with Journalists for Human Rights, JHR in Tunisia. She's a woman activist and the founder of the first community radio in Tunisia, which is Radio 6 Tunis. So Noza, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. Are you there with us? Is Nozar in the room with us? Yes, could the admin please unmute Nozar and also spotlight her video, please? Thank you. Noza, I think you're unmuted now. You should be able to speak. We can't hear Noza. Noza, unfortunately, we can't hear you.
Hello, I'm here. If you hear me,
yes, we can hear you now.
You can see me. See my.
We can't see you, but we can hear you. I can't see you. Perhaps the technical team, if you can spotlight Noza's video as well. But we can hear you, so please do go ahead.
Thank you. I'm here. Hi, good morning. I will speak about Tunisian context, and women in Tunisia play a pivotal role as a source of information, particularly in areas related to social, political, and cultural transformation. Tunisia has long been seen as regional leaders in women's rights and gender equality. Largely due to progressive policy and the active roles women have taken in public life. I will speak about political engagement and activism. Tunisian women have been at the forefront of political activism, particularly during and after 11 revolution. Many women in the protests that led to the fall of the Ben Ali regime and have since become influential voices in the democratic process. Women's organizations and activists provide essential information on human rights, gender equality, and the role of women in governance. They work to inform the public and policy makers about the facing women in Tunisia, women in politics, such as former minister, parliamentarian, and activists serve a key improvement on our gender policy, electoral reform, and political participation. About journalism and media, Tunisian women are active in journalism and the media, shaping public discourse, including women's rights, social justice, and political issues. Female journalists play a critical role in covering issues from a gender-sensitive perspective and reporting on matters that affect women directly. They also contribute to raising awareness about such domestic violence, education for girls, and rural providing information that challenge stereotypes and thinking. About academia and research, Tunisia women in academia contribute significantly to research in areas such as gender study, law, and sociology. Their research help inform national debates on gender equality, economic participation, and social inclusion. Scholars like historian Sophie Bessis and feminist activists provide valuable academic and social critique that are widely referenced in a discussion about women's role in revolution Tunisia. In cultural influence and art, I will speak about Tunisian women significant contribution to art and culture, cultures using this platform to raise awareness about gender issues and social change through literature, film, music, and theater. Tunisian women powerful narrative to highlight women's experience in struggles. On social media and digital women are highly active on social media where they share information, mobilize for cause, and raise awareness about gender-based issues. The digital sphere has become a powerful platform for women to disseminate influence in both local. You heard I have some problem to internet. Tunisian women are highly active on social platform like Twitter. You hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. It was intermittent, but we can hear you.
Okay, good. A platform like Twitter and
perhaps, Noza, you want to turn off your camera?
Protest.
Perhaps you want to turn off your camera so that the audio can be clearer.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
I will continue. On platforms like Twitter and Facebook are used by women activists share stories of harassment or abuse and create a sense of solidarity among women, making them essentially source on women issues. Women in Tunisia serve as critical source of information across multiple spheres, from politics and grassroots involvement and leadership in promoting women's rights and gender equality have made countries in the region, essentially in North Africa, and their voices continue to inform both national and international progress and justice, essentially in politics in Tunisia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noza. Thank you for sharing those remarks and giving us the Tunisian context, and obviously for the work that you do both with us at AWIM and at JHR as well. So thank you for your work. So colleagues, we are actually just on time, I think, enough for maybe one, possibly two questions. I'll invite our speakers to put their cameras on if possible, and for the technical team to please spotlight those speaker cameras as well. Now, I'm looking through the questions that have been asked in the chat, and quite a number of them. But I'm also looking at a lot of consistent questions. So I guess this first question I'm going to ask is for everybody. And permit me to, I'll just mention the names of the people who asked the similar questions, but also I'll just condense and summarize the questions. So we have Afia Ofosu, Asma James, Memuna, and a few others, I think there's quite a few of us, who have asked a question about how do we encourage women to speak with journalists? Okay, so for example, Asma James, and I'll read out her kind of version of the question, said, I have been a broadcast journalist for over 20 years. I used to host one of the most listened to morning programs in Sierra Leone until a year ago when I left and established my own radio station, Rise Radio, at 96.3 FM, primarily focused on women, girls, and young people's issues. My concern is sometimes accessing these expert women are so difficult, and sometimes they're shy to share their work. So that's an example of kind of a story, a very prominent topic that's been discussed in the chat. But the question is, how do we take a conscious and sensitive approach to empowering women to speak to media? Right? Because I don't think it's enough for us to say, oh, women are not ready to speak, because that's been the excuse we've heard for a long time. But it's about, okay, well, how do we as practitioners make sure that we are be more conscious of how we approach women to speak, and how do we support women and empower women to speak? Perhaps we can start with Dr. Blessing, given your background in psychology. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Like I mentioned earlier, that's where, so you're speaking about younger women, mentoring comes, plays a huge role. When we have this women communities, supportive communities, and then we have the older women, speaking to the younger ones, letting them know the benefits of being out there, depending on the kind of stories, because there are if it's just speaking about your profession, we can let them know what that visibility would mean for their career. So it's like creating awareness, and in supporting women groups that could encourage them to speak. But there are certain issues when it comes to issues like gender-based violence and stuff like that, because of stigmatization issues, women would not want to speak. So we can also look for ways to break the stigmatization. And that's where the kind of stories we report, and then our consistency in trying to sensitize people against stigmatization would play a role. But I think mentoring would do a lot. And then training workshops, developing the women. Some of them are also camera shy and all of that. So mentoring them, training them to speak, self-developing them, and then making them aware of the benefits of speaking up, of being visible as a professional in this digital age, like we've all said. You need to have a brand, and coming out there to speak is one way of branding yourself, making yourself more visible, and then it's going to bring you benefits. It's going to bring you more clients, it's going to give you more visibility and all of that. If more women know that there are benefits to these things, and then if we break the stigma attached to the woman that speaks too much, that wants to be everywhere and all of that, it might encourage more women, particularly the younger women, to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. Harriet, how about you?
Yeah, I perfectly agree with Dr. Blessing on this. And again, I want to also agree with the participant who has just raised a concern that women are not ready to speak. It's very true, especially those of us who are working purely in the women's sector, having women as our target, our primary target audience, and in the rural areas. It's a challenge that is very, very real. And for me, there is something I normally say, the English people say Rome was not built in a day. So out of 10 women, at least one woman will accept to talk to you. So for me, it's build one woman at a time. When you speak to this woman who is ready to speak to you, just highlight them, cover them, and she'll consequently see the results or the positive impact of what that coverage did to her. And more other women will also come on board, and you'll realize that with time, it's something that takes time. We can't say that we can just achieve it within a day. It will take time, but just deal with one woman at a time who is ready, and the rest will come on board with time.
Mm. Before Dr. Blessing, I see you got your hand up. Perhaps you wanted to respond. Madam Camera, you're on mute. If you can unmute your mic. And Hesbon, we would love to have your camera on if you can also join the discussion.
Voilà. Je dirais qu'il faut d'abord mettre les femmes en confiance. Comment? D'abord, il faut faire comprendre à tout le monde que les questions de genre ne concernent pas que les femmes. Voilà. Donc, il faut d'abord parler aux hommes, surtout au niveau rural, parce que les femmes ne peuvent pas parler sans l'autorisation des hommes, des maris, des parents. Donc, il faut d'abord parler aux hommes, les faire comprendre que les questions de genre n'est pas seulement une affaire des femmes. Donc, ça peut mettre aussi les femmes en confiance et dissiper la peur. Aussi, au niveau de l'administration, il y a des femmes qui travaillent, qui ne peuvent pas parler sans l'autorisation de hiérarchie. Donc, il faut vraiment sensibiliser les autorités à vraiment lever cette peur. Parce que ça, ce n'est pas seulement, c'est une réalité au Mali, ce n'est pas seulement que les femmes, même il y a des hommes. Les journalistes ont des problèmes pour parler avec les agents de l'administration sans l'avis de l'hiérarchie. Il y a cela aussi, ça c'est au niveau de l'administration et des collectivités. Il faut aussi mettre en confiance les femmes qui sont au niveau des organisations, des femmes individuelles et qui sont organisées en groupement. Il faut les mettre en confiance, leur montrer le pour et le contre, mais en même temps, prendre des angles qui les concernent. Ça va les mettre en confiance et ça va leur permettre vraiment d'accepter de parler. Voilà. Comment les mettre en confiance? Ça, c'est tisser des relations, parce qu'il ne s'agit pas aussi pour les journalistes de venir tout de suite parler à une source qu'elle accepte de vous faire confiance et vous parler. Donc, il faut créer des relations avec les organisations, les femmes. Voilà, ça peut aussi faciliter à leur mettre en confiance.
Yes, really important there around trust and how to gain trust and who can help to gain trust. But also perhaps what you said earlier on about there are those women who, because of the context, they have to take permission from certain members of their family before they can speak. And I think there's some sensitivities to be discussed around that as well in terms of how we go about doing that. Hesbon, do you want to come in and then we'll go to Dr. Blessings? I know you had your hand up a moment ago. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I don't think I would add much because the critical issues have already been voiced. But I think most importantly is that the media needs to be alive to the fact that even with a database of women who can be credible sources who want to speak, speaking in the media is a curve that people learn. So the more opportunities they give women, the better, the array of women they would have at their disposal when they're looking for expert opinion from women in different spaces. So there's that the media can play a part on. Give as many that opportunity, because then it also deals with the cultural nuances that stop women from, ascending to these spaces as sources, whether broadcast or print. The more we see women voice issues, articulate issues, the more that becomes more of the norm. And no one is inhibited. No one is stopped, because it becomes sort of a way of life in our society where when things happen, it is not the gender that speaks, it is the expertise, irrespective of what gender you are in. I know a lot of issues have been raised by the media, especially in Kenya, on availability and all that. One thing that most women, especially on broadcast media, do is at last minute, they have a lot of last minute cancellation. And I think it's a question of understanding the wider context within which both gender operates. Personally, I don't think a question of looking at it from the traditional way. It's just a question of being alive to the fact that there are certain barriers. And how do we overcome these barriers? How do we, in the way we approach issues, overcome these barriers? The issue of women have to get home and prepare kids for homework and all that is a barrier that has been, is an issue that has been banded. But now that we know that is an issue, a framework that then deals with that, how do we start encouraging more women in these spaces, so that even the people who believe that, it is their spouses, it is their wives who are supposed to be home, would see more of other women and start knowing that this is part of what the society is. There's a shift in norm. And therefore, if I have to get home and take care of the other duties that I thought it is my wife who is supposed to take care of, I'll be reminded that there's a bigger contribution that my wife is making to the society. And the more we inculcate this kind of culture, the easier it becomes for women to now find ways of breaking these barriers, because it becomes part of what even the media perpetuates as the norm.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And we're actually running out of time. So Dr. Blessing, I'll give you the final word and then I'll make a final point and hand over to Joy. Dr. Blessing.
Okay, thank you very much. So I was just going to say, because we have a lot of media leaders, like editorial leaders here, that we can pursue affirmative action in women representation. So if you're heading organizations, media organizations, you could actually tell your subordinates that for social story, we must have at least, I know the standard is 35% affirmative action, so we must have at least 5% of women here, but you can even, let it be a standard, let it be an intentionality around having women represented, so that people would go do more than they will go beyond those barriers. They will have to break those barriers to ensure that women are represented. So let's create a standard, some affirmative action. And then there's been a lot of discussion around the husbands permitting the women to speak. So there'll be like a need for value orientation around the men folks. I think two things hinder women from speaking. One is their spouses, another one is religion. So we can actually begin to target these barriers, the religious barriers. So we begin to take our campaigns to make women speak more to the churches and religious groups, and then target the men to change like a reorientation, change the orientation that your wife has to keep quiet, she's not be seen and stuff like that. That can also help us achieve our aims. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Blessing, and thank you to all of our panelists and our audience today for the amazing questions. There is one last comment that we don't have time to answer, but perhaps Dr. Owila, you can help us with, which is what is, and maybe in the chat, that whether it's possible to see a pattern on the main topics that women were main sources of information for. So perhaps you can respond to that in the chat. Thank you all so much for your time, our speakers. And now I'm going to hand over to Joy, because we are going to do a demonstration of Source Her, both for experts and also for media practitioners who have joined us today. So it's been a pleasure hosting this conversation. I'll now hand over to Joy Adigwe, who is the project lead for Source Her at AWIM. Over to you, Joy.
Right, thank you, Doc. And thank you to all our speakers. Just give me a moment. I'm trying to share my screen. So right now, I'll be taking us on a practical demonstration on how to use Source Her for both experts and journalists/editors. So I'll share my screen to a PowerPoint presentation, and all right, sorry, I'll share my screen first to a YouTube video. Right. Okay, and please let me know if you can hear the audio. Just a second, I need to stop so I can share the audio. Sorry about that. Technology. And please let me know if you can see my screen, the YouTube. Can anyone see the screen?
Yes, we can. Yes. Oh, I can.
Thank you, Winnie. All right, so this first video is on how experts can sign up and engage with Source Her platform. And I would show a practical demonstration how you can also send a message. So as a user, with my user account, how you can send a message to experts. So let's watch this short 2-minute video before we move on to the next presentation.
Do you know the power of networking? When you network, you enhance your access to job opportunities, professional connections, career advice, new ideas, and valuable information. Our platform, Source Her, is bridging the networking gap for women experts in Africa to help you easily discover expertise. Source Her is a product of African women in media. Source Her serves as a hub to promote the visibility of African women experts working across varied industries. By increasing the number of women expert sources in the media, thus amplifying the voice of women experts in the media. We welcome you to register on the Source Her platform and connect with women experts in healthcare, legal, information technologies, climate change, and women in media. Sourcehair continues with the effort to connect you as an expert with journalists who can cite you as an expert in news reports and thereby further expanding the visibility of your expertise to a wider audience. To use the Sourcehair platform, simply sign up, following which an email verification link will be sent to your email inbox. Use the link to get verified and log in with your details to the platform. Upon sign-in, you will be required to set up your profile, choosing the category and industry you fall into. You then type in a professional bio. Next, share links to your online platform as listed. Continue with the form till you get to the final page and your profile is created. There are experts in different fields from different countries. You can view their profiles and message them. Remember, networking helps you amplify your work. Connect with media professionals on the Sourcehair platform in your country and around Africa. Connect with other professionals in your field or other fields of interest. We warmly welcome you to Sourcehair, and we look forward to the great collaborations waiting to happen between expert African women.
Thank you very much. So that's the first video. And now I'll be sharing my screen once again for a presentation. So the presentation will be taking us on step-by-steps on how you as a journalist or as an editor or a researcher can connect with and sign up on Sourcehair. So if you're yet to sign up, you can follow step-by-step on how to sign up. And for those who have already signed up on the platform, but you're confused, or what's next? How do I engage with journalists? How do I engage with experts? So I would also be showing you how you can send a direct message to an expert via Sourcehair. Apologies. All right. So how to sign up on Sourcehair. Now, the first things first is you can also scan the QR code on this presentation, and that takes you directly to the Sourcehair website. So you input in your browser pane www.sourcehair.com, or you can type sourcehair.com directly, and it will take you to our homepage. Now, this is the screen. This is the page that it takes you to. If you are using a laptop, if you are using a mobile, it takes you to this page, but the mobile version. And the next thing you do when you get to this point is to click on sign up if you're a first-time user. However, if you already have an account with Sourcehair, then you click on login. But for this step, this is for first-time users, you click on sign up. When you click on sign up, it takes you to the sign up page where you fill out this form, you input your information on this form, and you click on register. Now, upon clicking on register, this email gets sent to your inbox, a verification email. And once you click on the link that is to verify, it brings you back to the Sourcehair website where you can then log in. So it takes you back to the home page and you click on login. Once you click on login, you input your password, which you have created in the previous form, and your email address, and you click on login. Now, once you are logged in on Sourcehair, that's it. You have access to the platform. Now, a lot of us have already gone through this process. We've gone through these steps. We've logged into the platform. You now have your user profile, you have your password, but you are asking the question, what next? What do I do after logging in? Right? So the next thing is to start searching for experts. Just a moment. Right. So what do you do after you successfully signed up? You have your user profile all set up. What's next? The next thing is to log into Sourcehair and start connecting with experts. So one of the visions that we had for Sourcehair was to make it more interactive, right, and to reduce the distance, or to bridge the gap between experts and users. And something that you can do on SOTA is you can directly message experts on here. So let's say I want to message Dr. Blessing, right? Let's say I want to message Dr. Blessing. Now, you can use the search function and search by name. You can also search by country. You can search by profession. You can search by profession, and all that is done under the Find Experts tab. So once you're on there, let's say I want to send Dr. Blessing a message. Now I click on Message Expert, and you see it's come up. I can send her a message right here, and Dr. Blessing would get a notification in her inbox letting her know that, hello, Joy, a journalist from Sourcer platform, is trying to reach you is trying to message you on the Sourcer platform. And this would notify her so she can log into her account and chat with me on the platform. Now, there are some things that we put in place to ensure that the safety and the privacy of both journalists and experts are well protected. And one of which is, before you are able to message an expert on SourceHer, you need to provide your information. So my user profile is fully set up. I've provided my information. I've provided links to my social media to help our developers confirm that these are not bots that are creating these accounts, but actual people, verifiable people, so that whenever an expert is speaking with a journalist on SourceHer, you are rest assured that this journalist has gone through a process, they provided some information, and we have vetted that information before allowing them to message you. Now, for a lot of you here who have registered on SourceHer, you notice that your account is at user level 1. And it will always tell you to upgrade your account. Now, when you click on upgrade your account, you need to provide your full information so that you can then be approved to send messages to experts. As a user level 1, you can view experts' profile, but you will not be able to message experts on SourceHer. So these are some of the ways in which, these are some of the security provisions in which that we put in to ensure that the conversations happening between journalists and users are safe. On SourceHer, we have, like I mentioned earlier, we have experts from different industries across different countries, African women experts across different industries, across the globe, who are willing and who have given the permission for them to be contacted for news stories. So to the researchers here, to the journalists here who are looking out for experts that they can cite in their stories, or experts that they can connect with for their stories or for their reports, please feel free to go on SourceHer and connect with the experts we have on there. They've given the approval. Just provide your information, request for an account upgrade. We approve your request, and you can start messaging instantly with journalists on the platform. It is secure, it is safe. We assure you that your safety, the security and safety of the information that you provided to us is very paramount to us. We are very big on data protection here at AWIM, so trust us with that data. And that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions or any concerns or any inquiries about SourceHer, I'll be putting my information in the chat, and also be putting the links to the platform. We also have FAQs on the website, so you can see some frequently asked questions, and just to get like the answers to those questions. So we are always available. The SourceHer team is always available to help out in any way that we can, because the mission to increase the representation of women experts in news stories is one that is very dear to us, is one that we are very active in. And we can't do this alone. We can only do this with the help and support and participation of everyone here on this call. So I would like to take a moment. I'll be sharing the links to the chat. Please join in, sign up, upgrade your account. For those who have forgotten their password, you can send a password request and you get a link to reset your password. So I don't know, I'd just like to give us like 2 minutes, right? I'm going to put back up the slide, and I would like to give us 2 minutes to just sign into the SourceHer platform if you're yet to sign in. Okay, so 2 minutes is small, 1 minute, right? 60 seconds on the clock. And if you're yet to sign up into SourceHer, or you're yet to create your account, This is an opportunity for you to create your account and just get on the platform. So I'll be sharing back the page that has the QR code and the link to the website. We can start using that right away. Just a second, I'm trying to, yes. So let's start scanning and accessing. And after that, so after the minute is up, I'll be handing over back to Mercy Njoroge from JHR to take over. So 60 seconds on the clock. Our time starts now. All right, 30 seconds gone. Right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for giving us your attention. I'd like to hand over right now to Mercy Njoroge for the closing remarks. Over to you, Mercy.
Thank you very much, Joy. That was excellent presentation. And I hope you're going to get more sign-ups from the journalists as well as from the experts. So mine is to just say a word of thanks to everyone who has joined us today. And I think this is one of the most enriching conversations I have been in a long time. So thank you very much to our moderator, Dr. Emisi, for moderating this session really well and for bringing out a lot of issues that I feel like this conversation hasn't even started. I believe there'll be more opportunities for us to engage moving forward and to also encourage everyone to sign up to SOSHA. Let us make this platform as useful as so that we can achieve the objective of starting this platform. So mine is to also thank all the speakers, that is Mrs. Kamara, Hesbon, Dr. Blessing, and also Harriet for creating the time to join us today, and also for offering very insightful observations and just opening up our minds on why it's important for us as journalists and also as consumers of media to hear the voices of women and to also promote the amplification of voices of women. Lastly is to just thank the AWIM team from Joy and the Blessing and also from JHR myself for the wonderful work that we have done to put this webinar together. We have been working around the clock and I'm really happy that it has come out well. And to just say thank you also to generally the JHR team, starting with our leadership from Winnie, Mustafa, Bernard, Penina, for all the support that you have accorded us in ensuring that this webinar has been a success. I believe an evaluation form will be sent to you, all the participants who I believe I've also thanked for making time to engage with us. So kindly fill in the evaluation form. That information will really be helpful for us to get the way forward. And to just say that also engage us on all our social media platforms, that is on X and Facebook and Instagram, that is JHR, Voice for Women and Girls' Rights, and also AWIM. So thank you very much to everyone for creating the time. These conversations will continue and we'll still call upon you to join us in the near future. Let me wish everyone a good afternoon and a good day ahead and a winning week ahead. Thanks and bye for now.
Joy is sending it. Joy has the hosting rights.
Yes, I just sent it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bernard.
Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you, Dr. Emisi. Thank you, team. Oh, there is a hand up. It's your hand? Okay.
Bye-bye, everybody.
I think it's done. So Omar, do you want to say something? Frida, I can see your hand. I'm sorry if we have cut you short. Omar, you can unmute. Omar, you can unmute. Yes, you can talk. I can see you are already on. It's unfortunate we can't get you. Omar, maybe you can share the question with us. We'll be able to escalate it and get back. Or any comment, we appreciate.